think I'm like a lot of fly fishermen that eventually wanted to learn to tie their own flies. The first book I ever bought was Tying Western Trout Flies by Jack Dennis. And since then, Jack and I have spent a lot of time together. Actually, I was involved a little bit with Jack on his volume 2 of that book. And Jack just lives over the hill in Wyoming, and we've become very close friends and also fishing companions. But during the off season, when we're not fishing, we've done all kinds of programs together, and I've learned so many things from Jack. That's been one of the great experiences for me in going to these seminars and working with him, is what I've learned. And Jack's got some great tips here on fly casting.
One of the hardest aspects to this fly fishing and casting is wind. It comes at the most inopportune times, like all the time. And you got to learn how to handle it. And I'm going to give you my basic wind lesson. And it's really simple for you to understand. I want you to, when you go out in your car next and you're driving down the freeway or out in the highway, I want you to put your arm out. And if you just stick your arm out in the wind, out of the window, it's just going to stay there. That's a good straight cast. Now, I want you to start taking your hand like this, and what's going to happen, it's going to go whop right back to the window. Why? Because that is the front part of your fly line. It's going to be catching the wind, which will be coming into you as you make your cast. Think of this as the front part of your fly line. Now, and here's the key to learning how to cast in the wind. You take your hand like this, tilt it down, and you'll be able to just easily push your hand into the wind. It's all about aerodynamics. When you have this big, wide front loop into the wind, it causes lift. And you're trying to push this into the wind, and the wind's going to blow it back. And the more you try to push it out, the more you try to cast harder, the least far it'll go. It just won't go out at all. Now we're going to let the rod show you how to change the cast. I want you to visualize if you were standing like we are right now. We're standing on a plane, and I'm making a straightforward cast. There's no wind. And we're just like that hand being out in the window. Nice and even. Now what we're going to do is change. The word is angle of attack, like in a wing. The angle of attack is going to be changed by the path of your rod. Now, right now, the path of the rod is basically, I'm using the tip. It's going back and forth. Now look what's going to happen. We're going to go up and straight down, up and straight down. In other words, it's like I've taken my body and tilted it, so I'm casting this direction. It has to do with your stroke. We're going to shorten the stroke, raise the arm, and then we're going to pull down at this angle like this. We're going to pull down. Now what that does is flattens out the rod. It flattens the rod and changes the angle of your line. And you know, you might say, well, wow, this is casting in the wind, this is going to help me. But you know what else is going to help you? It's going to help you cast those strike indicators and those multiple flies and those great big woolly buggers. You won't have to do that chuck and duck cast. You're going to be able to cast it much better because it's going to help you in all your casting, knowing how to change the direction and angle of attack of your cast. Now let's take a look at it right here. Here we go, the wind's coming at us. We're going to go into the wind. We're going to change the direction of the cast by not going too far back. One of the first mistakes that most anglers do is they let the line go back here, and then they try to push all that line forward. In other words, as we come up, the wind is going to help us by pulling that line and accelerating it. We're going to catch the wind, then by pulling back down, we're going to change that angle of attack just like that hand out in that car. And you're going to see how easy it is. Now, first thing you do is you get out in the wind and you start pulling down. Now, some of you are going to do this. You're going to start trying to push the tip. You're going to try pulling like that. And look where the rod's going to go. It's going to be like that. And they're going to say, drive the tip in. Drive the tip in. It's not the tip. It's pulling down on the butt. Notice where my arm is going. This is a very important stroke to learn, and it's a finesse stroke. You practice it a lot. A little bit later on, we're going to start talking about hauls. And when you combine it, now I'm going to just show you a little something here, As we come back into the wind, if I pull down with my hand as I'm casting, as I'm pulling down with the rod, I'm pulling down with the line and giving a little pull on it, what that's going to do is it's going to accelerate it. It's going to add more energy. We go back up, we come up, stop, the wind catches our line. As we pull down, we can give a little pull. There is no way that you're going to cast long distances in the wind, but what you really want to do is get that line out in the wind so you can fish. And let's be frank about it. Most of the fish in this world is caught between 25 and 30 feet. So if you can get a 20 to 30 foot cast in the heaviest of winds, and I'm talking to a 50 or 60 mile an hour wind, you're going to be able to make a cast out by learning this cast. Now another problem is going to come up. You're going to say, wait a minute, what happens if I'm in a situation where I can't change and be able to cast directly into the wind? How do I handle a crosswind? Well, you know, it's amazing things a lot of people don't understand about crosswinds. The wind, that means coming at this angle. You know, and if you're in a lake, you can kind of paddle your float tube around and cast into it. But if you're on the bank of the river and the only cast is against that bank, you got to learn how to have your rod help you. In this rod is a spine. This is where and people always ask me, what's the difference between a good rod and a poor rod? And I'll tell you what it is. It's having that spine. The better the rod, the better the spine. That's where it's reinforced. So when your rod goes back and forth and flexing, it's stiffer back there. And so you can use that to help you. Now let's talk about a wind that's coming in from my left. And I want to cast over to that direction. Look what I'm doing here. I'm turning as I'm casting. I'm adding more power right in here, and I'm turning that spine in and cutting into the wind. Again, it's the same stroke. It's the same stroke that I did on my wind cast, except I'm leaning more energy and turning it in. Same exact if it's coming from the other direction. Boom, turning. Look at that. Look at how the arm is pointed out and the tip. And you're going to be able to cast, especially if you're in a drift boat. If you're casting from a boat or even a boat on a lake, into a wind like that. And again, you can add, by taking your hand, pulling down, you can shoot the line. You know, shooting the line is very important. And that's the next step that we're going to be covering right after this, is how to improve your shooting line. How you can shoot, and the shooting is what helps you learn how to haul. You can't double haul, I don't care who teaches you, until you learn how to shoot a line. Now, let me just show you a couple more things I want to talk to you about in this wind. Wind behind you. You know, like everybody wants to have the wind behind you, but if you get a heavy wind behind you, it can be a problem, because what it does, with the wind pushing from behind you, it collapses your back cast. You know, you need your line to be able to straighten out, and if it's blown back, what's going to happen is you come forward, a lot of times it slams into your rod, or it piles right in front of you. So if you have a wind behind you, you want to be able to accelerate it, and so you add more acceleration. And so you're actually driving that rod into the wind, so that you're getting a cast. It's almost the reverse of what you just did. So as you're coming forward into the wind, you let it drive it up. As you come forward, you keep your rod a little higher and catch the wind. You actually catch the wind and lower your energy and let the wind pull your line out. Try it. You'll be very surprised. Now, I want to talk another way about, and I love this cast. Everybody out there's done it. It's called the reverse. I don't want to cast that direction, but I will. Like this, like that. I watch guys, the bank's over here, the water's over there, and they're casting at this direction, and then all of a sudden they go like that. And it sometimes works. But there's a simpler way of doing that so it doesn't land in your head. And of course, you know what the reason is. You're casting, the wind's coming here, and it's blowing that fly line dangerously around your head. You know, the more you cast, the more you learn. Now watch this with a little practice. I'm going to bring the rod back. What did I just do? Look where the angle of the rod is. I just went up to a little circle and took it over here. Now, the wind's, of course, going to blow it that way, but look what happens. Boom, boom. I bring it over here, the wind's now over there because I've changed the path tip of the rod, and wherever the tip of the rod goes, the line goes. Pulling the line to increase the line speed, boom. Now you can give these casts a lot of names. For some strange reason they call this a Belgian cast. I don't know if some Belgian did it first or he casted from England to Belgium when he first did it, but it's simply a rotation. And you're going to do a lot of casts where you change the path of that tip. Okay, here we go again, learn your hauls. So we're going to go into the next facet of this and learn, first of all, to get better at shooting a line, and second of all, learn how to do the hauls, or the pulls, or the jerks. Now I'm going to show you another cast into the wind to leave you with that we're going to catch up when we go into the next section. And that is a low haul. And the only time you'd use this is you're out on the Florida flats and you've got to cast a long cast into a wind. And this is not for the faint of heart, and it's not a beginner's cast, but it's something for you to aspire to. And what it is simply by laying the line low. And you're overpowering. It's like a jet airplane that uses power to overwhelm dynamics. The same reason that a jet rocket can go straight in the air instead of using the wind for a lift. More energy, more energy. So here we go. Let's take a look at how we accomplish this. Well, the line goes back and behind us. You first practice this by just laying it behind you, and then you got the heavy, fast wind coming in there and you shoot it into the wind. Now, keeping it low keeps the wind from catching it. As you go back like this, the wind's going to blow it back down. So what you do is you keep a very short back cast and keep it low. Let's take a look at this. Again, the line is way back here. See how low I'm keeping it? And then as I'm coming forward, I'm going to drive it right into the wind. And I'm actually keeping the rod tip fairly low. Fairly low. Because if you keep it high, what's going to happen? You're going to have that bend and loop of the line and have that wind blowing it back at you. Now, this is a hard cast. This is what you have to learn in this upcoming session before you get that. But I did not want to include it because it is a part of casting into the wind. It's increasing the line speed. It's increasing the line speed. And that will drive it into the wind and keeping a low cast. It's similar to where we tipped our hand down, but it's essentially trying to keep it at that level and increasing the line speed. Wind does not have to be your enemy. It can actually, there are some of the best days I've ever had fishing. I remember a day on Mount Cook in New Zealand where it was so windy when I stood up to cast, it blew me back down. And yet I was able to get a 20-foot cast into, I don't even want to know how many mile-an-hour wind it was. All I had to do in that wind was get the cast because I didn't have to worry about presentation because there were white caps on the river. But I got that line out in that, at 20 feet is all I needed, and I had the best fishing day I ever could have. So your wind sometimes can be your